Imagine a sunny day on the vast American plains, children laughing, their voices echoing across golden fields, running barefoot through the tall grass, chasing each other under a wide, endless blue sky. The air is warm, filled with the scent of earth and wildflowers. And for a moment, life feels simple and full of promise. Nearby, farmers pause their work, wiping sweat from their brows as they scan the horizon, searching for any sign of rain. Their crops are thirsty, the ground beneath their boots cracked and dry, and every day without water brings new worry. Suddenly, a strange darkness creeps across the horizon, not the welcome shadow of a rain cloud, but something far more ominous. It's a wall of dirt, a black blizzard rolling forward with terrifying speed, swallowing everything in its path. The wind begins to howl, fierce and unrelenting, lifting the very soil from the ground and hurling it skyward. Day turns to night in an instant as the dust blots out the sun, plunging the world into an eerie, suffocating darkness. The sun, once bright and life-giving, vanishes behind a curtain of swirling grit. Millions of tons of precious topsoil are ripped from the earth and carried away, lost to the storm. Even the birds, caught in the choking, abrasive air, struggle to breathe. Some fall from the sky, their wings heavy with dust, unable to escape the storm's grip. People drop everything and rush for shelter, desperately sealing windows and doors with wet rags and towels. But the dust is relentless. It seeps through every crack, invading homes, lungs, and lives. Inside, families huddle together in near total darkness, listening to the deafening roar outside and the constant, relentless pelting of dirt against the walls. Fear and uncertainty fill the air as they wait for the storm to pass. When the storm finally moves on, a thick layer of dust covers everything: food, water, beds, and furniture. There is no escape. The dust finds its way into every corner, a constant reminder of nature's power. These storms weren't rare or isolated. Year after year, they returned, stripping the land of its fertility and hope, leaving behind barren fields and broken spirits. Some storms were so massive their dust traveled thousands of miles, carried by the wind from Oklahoma all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, dusting ships at sea and cities far from the plains. For those who lived through it, every day brought new fear and uncertainty. The future seemed as clouded as the sky, and hope was as hard to find as a clear breath of air. The land itself seemed to rise up in rebellion, merging earth and sky in a spectacle of nature's fury, a force that no one could control or predict. The memory of these black blizzards would haunt a generation, leaving scars on the land and in the hearts of all who witnessed their wrath. The Dust Bowl was not just a moment in history, it was a place, a vast and sprawling region in the southern plains, where the horizon seemed endless and the sky stretched wide above the earth. This region included parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico, forming the heart of America's agricultural promise. Once these plains were a land of hope and abundance, covered in tough, resilient native grasses that had evolved over centuries to anchor the soil and withstand the harshest conditions. These deep-rooted grasses formed a living shield, protecting the earth from the relentless winds and periodic droughts, maintaining a delicate ecological balance that had lasted for generations. But in the early 1900s, waves of settlers arrived, lured by the promise of cheap land, government incentives, and soaring wheat prices that seemed to guarantee prosperity. The Great Plow-Up began in earnest. Millions of acres of native grassland were torn up by powerful new machines, replaced by endless rows of crops. For a time, the harvests were rich and plentiful. People believed they had conquered the land, turning wild prairie into a breadbasket for the nation. But the native grasses were gone, replaced by shallow-rooted crops that could not hold the soil in place. The land's natural defenses had been stripped away. Now, the earth was left bare and exposed, vulnerable to the whims of nature, waiting for the inevitable drought and the fierce winds that would soon arrive. Farmers had staked everything on the hope of good weather, never imagining that their dreams could so quickly turn to dust. Few realized the risk they were taking. The balance of the ecosystem was shattered, and the land began to suffer. Crops withered, and the soil started to erode away. When the rains finally stopped, disaster was no longer just a possibility. It was inevitable. The land could not recover on its own. The stage was set for a catastrophe unlike anything the region had ever seen. Towering dust storms swept across the plains, swallowing towns and farms. In darkness, the land, once so fertile and full of promise, now lay exposed to nature's wrath, barren, broken, and betrayed by those who had hoped to tame it. The Dust Bowl wasn't just a natural disaster, it was a human-made crisis, a perfect storm of environmental missteps and economic ambition that would change the face of rural America forever. In the early 20th century, farmers, eager to prosper and encouraged by new technology, plowed up the vast, grassy plains with powerful new tractors, believing in the old saying that rain follows the plow. They saw the endless prairie as an opportunity for wealth and growth. Using conventional tillage methods, they left the soil loose and exposed after every harvest, stripping away the protective grasses that had anchored the earth for centuries. Crop rotation and soil resting, practices that could have preserved the land, were ignored in favor of quick profits and ever-expanding fields. For a few years, the gamble seemed to pay off. Rain fell, wheat prices soared, and farmers celebrated record harvests, convinced their good fortune would last. But in the early 1930s, the rain stopped. The skies cleared, and the once fertile ground began to dry and crack under the relentless sun. Drought gripped the Great Plains, one of the worst in American history, turning green fields into a parched, lifeless expanse. Crops withered in the fields, and the exposed soil, no longer held in place by roots, turned to dust at the slightest touch. The once rich earth became pale, cracked, and barren, stretching for miles with hardly a sign of life. The Great Plains, always known for their strong winds, now faced relentless, furious gusts that swept across the open land day and night. With millions of acres of loose, unprotected soil, the wind lifted the earth itself, creating massive clouds of dust that blotted out the sun. The seeds of disaster, plowed grass, poor farming practices, and relentless drought combined to create a catastrophe no one had foreseen. The result was terrifying. Dust storms, sometimes called black blizzards, swept across the land, swallowing homes, farms, and entire towns in choking darkness. The Dust Bowl was born from the collision of human ambition and nature's unpredictable power, a stark reminder of the limits of our control. The lesson was clear: the land cannot be endlessly exploited without consequences. The scars left behind would serve as a warning for generations. The consequences would be felt for years to come, as families abandoned their homes and the landscape itself was forever changed by the choices of the past. The black blizzards were wind erosion on a massive scale. Years of plowing destroyed the soil's structure, leaving it powdery and loose. Drought baked out the last moisture, making the topsoil light as dust. Powerful cold fronts collided with warm air, generating fierce winds. The wind picked up the lightest particles, suspension, lifting them thousands of feet into the air. Medium particles bounced along the ground, saltation, creating a sandblasting effect. The largest particles rolled along the surface. Surface creep. This constant movement stripped paint, buried equipment, and moved millions of tons of soil. In the worst areas, fertile topsoil vanished, leaving only barren subsoil. The sky was filled with earth, a scientific process that felt like the end of the world. Life in the Dust Bowl was a daily battle against the dust. Families rushed to seal their homes, stuffing rags in cracks and hanging wet sheets, but the dust always found a way in. It coated every surface, invaded food and water, and made breathing difficult. At meals, plates were kept upside down until the last moment. Bread was gritty, sleep was restless, and mornings began with dust on faces and pillows. Dust pneumonia became common, especially among children and the elderly. Hospitals filled with patients struggling to breathe. People wore cloth masks, but they offered little protection. Outside, visibility dropped to zero. People tied ropes from house to barn to avoid getting lost. Livestock suffered too, blinded and starving as dust filled their stomachs. The dust was more than an inconvenience. It was a constant, life-threatening presence. Survival meant adapting to a world turned hostile. The Dust Bowl brought immense suffering. Farms lost, dreams shattered, families forced to leave. Crops failed, debts mounted, and banks foreclosed on generations-old farms. Many packed up and headed west, seeking work and hope in California. These Okies faced long journeys, broken cars, and harsh welcomes in makeshift camps. Their struggles were captured in Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath and Dorothea Lange's photographs. Yet, not everyone left. 2/3 stayed, clinging to their land and community. They endured the storms, believing the rains would return. Their story is one of resilience, enduring poverty and disaster with stubborn courage. The Dust Bowl tested the human spirit, but it also revealed its strength. Hope survived even in the darkest times. Survival in the Dust Bowl depended on community. Neighbors shared food, searched for lost livestock, and bartered goods when money was worthless. Churches and halls became centers of support, offering meals and moments of connection. Potlucks and gatherings brought light to the darkness, reminding people they weren't alone. Creative coping emerged. Penny auctions helped save farms from foreclosure. Neighbors bid low, then returned property to the original owners, a quiet rebellion. Humor became a survival tool, with jokes about the dust and the wind. Birds fly backward to keep sand out of their eyes, they'd say. This spirit of endurance and solidarity helped people face overwhelming adversity. The Dust Bowl forged a community that refused to be broken. Recovery from the Dust Bowl required a revolution in farming and government action. President Roosevelt's New Deal created the Soil Conservation Service, led by Hugh Hammond Bennett. The SCS taught farmers new techniques, contour plowing, shelter belts, and replanting native grasses. Damaged land was taken out of production and restored. It was a massive educational effort. Farmers had to unlearn old habits. Demonstration projects and financial incentives encouraged change. Slowly, the land began to heal. The final piece was the return of rain in 1939. Grasses grew, dust storms faded, and by the early 1940s, the Dust Bowl era ended. The land was scarred, but the black blizzard ceased. The partnership between people and government saved the plains. The long, dark decade was finally over. The Dust Bowl left a permanent mark on America, a lesson in the limits of the land. It shattered the belief that nature could be endlessly exploited. Soil conservation became fundamental to farming. Contour plowing, shelter belts, and no-till methods are its legacy. The disaster created a new conservation ethic, shaping land management worldwide. The Dust Bowl is a story of suffering, resilience, and the strength of community. It reminds us of the social costs of environmental disaster and the courage of those who endured. As we face new challenges, climate change, drought, the lessons of the Dust Bowl are more relevant than ever. Our relationship with the land is delicate. Short-term gains can lead to long-term catastrophe. The Dust Bowl is not just history, it's a warning for the future.